Hey guys, it's Brijette with Sandy Seed Company, and we're here on our Ramona farm, and we're going to be talking about tomato pruning. Everything you need to know about tomato pruning, why you do certain things, also why it's not black and white. There's no specific way to prune, but we're going to talk about what methods you can use and why, and how you can have healthy, overall super productive tomatoes when you prune a little bit in the summer. Okay, so if you watch this whole video, you're gonna know what a leader is on a tomato plant. You're gonna know what a sucker is on a tomato plant. I'm gonna talk about the differences between indeterminate and determinate. You're gonna learn how we prune on a professional farm and what you might do in the home garden to get the most productive, healthy plants possible. All right, so let's walk down this beautiful row of tomato plants that I am so proud of, because look how perfect they look. I mean, literally, these guys are gorgeous. They are just looking so nicely pruned from the bottom all the way up. And that is one of the first things that I want to talk about with tomato pruning. So in particular, when we're talking about indeterminate tomato plants, which let's specify what that is first for those of you who may not know. An indeterminate tomato plant, or sometimes it's called a pole tomato plant, is a plant that's going to get really long and tall. It's going to need a big trellis, and it's going to grow all kinds of different stems that are going every single way, and it takes a little bit of extra pruning to keep them controlled. Now, if you want to be a lazy gardener and only prune the bare minimum, the first and most important thing I would say is pruning from the bottom up. Now, the reason why we want to get rid of all of the leaf matter on the bottom going upwards is because it's really low to the ground, and particularly those of us who are outside of zone 9 or 10 or areas that get a lot of rainfall. So actually, like those of you who are in Florida who are in zone 10, but you get a lot of summer rain, getting the leaves off the ground is going to prevent bacteria from splashing off the soil with the raindrops and getting up onto the plant, and then crawling up the plant and giving you late blight, early blight, all the hundreds of different tomato diseases that you can get because of bacteria that's in the soil that's going to make it up onto the plant. Now, we're in a very dry zone, so we don't need to worry about that as much. So why would we do it? We're still giving the plant a lot of airflow, okay, so that we can make sure that if we do get late season rain, or if the irrigation breaks, that this is nice and dry around the bottom of the plant. And the other reason why we prune these is because guess what? I don't want tomatoes that close to the ground. You want to know why? They're only going to get eaten by something. In fact, one year the rabbits were so bad on the farm that every single tomato that was basically a foot off the ground was eaten from the inside out. Bunnies just came along and just chewed them down. So that's number one. So if you got bored and you don't want to do any more pruning, you can tune out now, and that's all the pruning that you have to do. That's fine. That's the most important. But let's take on the next step if you really want to have really great indeterminate tomatoes. The next question you might have is, well, how do I keep pruning? What's a leader? Why do I even need a leader? What does it mean? Let's talk about that. So if we go to this plant, you can see we pruned up off the ground, and then we have more or less pruned it back to what has ended up being 1, 2, 3 leaders. And what a leader means is it's just the main strong stem. Now, there are lots of varieties that you actually can prune to just 1 leader. If you are familiar with our low and lean system, you know that requires you to prune to just 1 leader. It's a little hard to do that in the sense that you got to stay on top of it, but not impossible, and a way to get a lot of productive tomatoes off of a plant in a very small area. Because we have so many tomato plants, we don't need to worry about that, and we have over 500 plants on this farm this year. It would be really hard for us to be able to prune every single one to 1 leader. So what we do is we try to at least reduce down to no more than 3, preferably 2 leaders, and lead them up the trellis. What we're doing by having a system like that is it's making it easier for us to see inside the plant, so that we can see if there's any insect damage. We can see when the tomato hornworms come. I'm not getting masses of clumps of material that is going to be basically a home for aphids or whiteflies to really take off. I'm getting nice airflow around the plant, and I'm making it more trainable. A leader is basically just a way to train the tomato plant, because guess what? The tomato plant doesn't really care what your plans are. It just wants to grow a lot of plant matter. But you need to say, hey, no, I want lots of tomatoes. I mean, you can have a big plant, but we need lots of tomatoes. So how do you do that? So pruning to really no more than 3 liters. If you can get down to 2 liters, that's great. This is what happens every single year, even on our professional farm. In the beginning of the season, we're really good about pruning. Towards the end of the season, we're so busy harvesting and watering and everything else, it just kind of falls apart, and that's okay. What you should do in your garden is have the best intentions possible and know throughout the year, some of those things are gonna change a little bit, and that's okay. So we've pruned down to 3. Now let's talk about the next thing that you really wanna consider, and that is a sucker, okay? I'm sure you've heard it. It's probably one of the most common things that people talk about. A sucker is a part of a tomato plant, in particular on an indeterminate tomato, that can actually basically like suck energy from the plant because it's gonna grow a whole nother plant for you, and you're gonna get more plant matter and less tomato. Now I'll find one here, like this is a really good example. So we start from the bottom, we come up. Now this was actually a sucker that we left, which is fine, but let's go up this main stem here, and you can see there's this leaf here, and then right in the armpit, which again is not a scientific term, but right in the armpit is what looks like its own new baby tomato plant, and it is. This is gonna grow to get super big, and let's go up and let's see, look, you can see the next armpit, there's another one, and look how big this is. I'm actually gonna prune that off. Look how big that is, and we're gonna keep going, and now look at this one. This one is huge, and this is a great visual for you to see what it will turn out to be. So this little tiny guy that seems harmless is gonna keep growing and get that big, and then it's gonna get this big, and then it's gonna take on suckers of its own. Now you might be thinking, why do I even care? There's flowers on there. Well, let's go back down to the ground here. And let's follow the energy. So if we start down at the bottom and we're coming up here, remember this first little sucker was right here. The energy is going to get sidelined into growing this plant, or this sucker right here, into being as big as this guy. And it's going to prevent energy from going into the flowers, which is going to give you tomatoes. So the name is very obvious. It's called a sucker because it's sucking energy out from where you're trying to get it to go. So let's, to really drive this point home, let's follow another one here. So we've got this little tomato vine here. Let's find a tomato. Okay, so look, we've got a cluster of tomatoes here. And you start from the bottom and we're going all the way up, and right here, down here, we've got this little tiny sucker, which again, be no fool, it's gonna grow up to be this big, and it's gonna suck energy. So we're gonna take that sucker off, and we're gonna come up here, and here's another sucker. We're gonna take that one off. Why? Because all that energy is going to suck from the plant the energy that needs to go into this tomato cluster right here, because I want those tomatoes to ripen. Do we do this every single time we come out to the farm? No, we try our best. Always at the beginning of the season, we have really good intentions. We prune as much as we can, and then towards the end of the season, it kind of gets out of control. But that's one of the secrets on how you get really good early tomatoes, because you're telling the plant, no, don't grow more plant matter, ripen the little baby tomatoes that you already have on there. And again, this is applicable to indeterminate tomatoes. All right, so what are some other types of pruning that we do here on the farm? Well, we might actually top our tomato plants, and that's because once it gets to this point, when it's this high, really the only thing that's gonna happen is the tomato plant's gonna keep growing and it's gonna break and fall on top of each other. So we might come through and prune. Also, because if there's tomatoes in this middle section, again, we don't want the plant putting energy going up, ripen what we have. Now, these are just a few of the many, many pruning techniques that are out there. But as I mentioned, there are different types of tomatoes. There are indeterminates, which definitely require some pruning. And then there's one of the things that we love the most. There's dwarf tomato plants, which can be both indeterminate or determinate. That's very confusing, but it refers to the size and the shape of the plant. Let's go look at them, because you can see you're gonna need to do almost no pruning on these dwarf tomato plants. Okay, so we're looking at right here, dwarf tomato plants. Now, you know we have a ton of videos on them because I love dwarf tomato plants, and this is why. We have one 4-foot stake in this plant. That's it. which is pretty incredible. There's no way we could get away with doing that on those indeterminate pole tomato plants. These plants tend to be smaller, stockier. You can see real stocky plants. We've tied them in with some string, and they just require far less pruning or no pruning at all. On our farm, too many tomato plants, we don't even prune them. They're gonna grow super happy just on this one stake. So the type of tomato plant that you grow really is going to determine how and how often you're going to prune. Okay, so if you're a grower in zone 9 and 10 or a similar climate, please subscribe to our channel so that we can help you be a really good gardener and so that we can learn from you. I want to know, what trellising system do you love? And the big question that we argue about late into the night here at the farm, to prune or not to prune? That is the question. It's not black and white. Everyone has their opinion, so I want to hear from you if you prune and whether you think it really makes a big deal in the garden. So if you watch this video and you were like, that's too much work, or I'm confused, guess what? Just get yourself dwarf tomato seeds, because they take little to no pruning and you'll have nice, happy, healthy plants, even though you're not out there spending hours and hours pruning away tomato matter.